Hello class, I'm Steve Decker. This is COM 2200, Chapter 3, Listening. There's a big difference between hearing and listening. Hearing, of course, is sound waves hitting the eardrum, turning into biochemical messages that the brain interprets as sound. Listening is something altogether different. Listening is concentrating, focusing on the message of the speaker, trying to get the sense, trying to understand exactly what the speaker is saying and what they mean by what they're saying. There are 4 types of listening: appreciative listening, empathic listening, comprehensive listening, critical listening. Now, appreciative listening is listening for pleasure. We listen to our iPod, we listen to Pandora, we listen to a comedy routine. Empathic listening is listening for support. A psychiatrist listens to a patient. Perhaps some of you have listened to a friend who was in need or was going through some distress in their lives, and you were kind enough to listen to them. And then there's comprehensive listening, which is listening to understand. This is what I hope you're doing now and what you will do throughout all of your university career, listening to understand. Critical listening is a skill that very few people have developed. And that is listening to evaluate a person's conclusion and deciding whether, based on their evidence, to accept or to reject it. That is critical listening. We listen for the evidence. Do they support their conclusions? Have they proved what they're asserting? And we need to listen carefully and learn to be critical listeners. We'll work on that this semester. Now, what are some of the causes of poor listening? Well, lack of concentration is one of the causes. There's a lot of interference going on around us. A plane flies over, someone coughs, a car passes by. These are all external interferences that interfere with us concentrating and understanding the message of the speaker. But there's also internal interference. We've got a problem with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or our parents or our grades or our finances. Many things can cause our minds to be not focused or concentrating on the message of the speaker. And so interferences and cause lack of concentration, which is, of course, poor listening. Sometimes we listen too hard. You try to hear everything the speaker has to say. You can't do it. You can't do that. You have to learn to listen differently and appropriately, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Sometimes poor listening is caused because we jump to conclusions. In other words, somebody announces a topic. We think the topic is going to be dull, something we're totally not interested in. And so we jump to the conclusion that this is not going to be interesting, this is going to waste my time, and so we don't concentrate. And that's a poor listening skill. Sometimes we say, hey, don't confuse me with the facts, my mind is already made up. And they announce a topic and we already have our opinion, and we're not willing to listen to the proof and the evidence that they have to support their conclusion, which is different from ours. Sometimes poor listening is caused because we focus on delivery and appearance. Someone says or they say, you know what I mean, over and over again. Perhaps they use a gesture repetitively. And then we might judge them because of the way they look, their culture, their dress, their appearance, their hair, whatever comes to mind, whatever bothers us a little bit, and we stop listening and concentrating on the message. The big problem is brain time. We talk at about 120 to 150 words a minute. We process words at 400 to 800 words a minute. There is a lot of spare brain time, and so our mind runs off on little rabbit trails and we lose the message of the speaker. Now, all of these are reasons for poor listening. Perhaps you could even think of others. Now, how can we become a better listener? Well, when you're listening to a speech, listen, be serious first of all. Make it your intention, make a predetermined decision that I'm going to focus on this speaker. I'm going to be a serious listener. Then block out distractions. That's one way to be a serious listener. Yes, I've got some difficulties. We all have problems. I'm going to set them aside for these 5 to 7 minutes while this speaker is speaking, and I am going to understand. I'm seriously going to try to understand the message that they're delivering. And then ignore appearance and delivery. Appearance and delivery are very important. But even though they may be bothering you a little bit, you're going to set that aside and listen to the content of the message and focus on what that speaker has to say. And that's a decision you have to make. Suspend judgment. Don't judge until you hear them out. Hear their evidence. Perhaps they even move you a little bit toward their conclusion during their speech. So listen with an open mind and take notes. And when you take notes, just write down key words. That's all you need to do. If you try to write down everything the speaker has to say, you're going to miss something because you're thinking about what they've just said and you're trying to write it all down and they've gone on to something else and you miss it. Learn how to take notes, and of course we've taught you the Cornell note-taking system. Now, the question is, how do we better focus our listening skills? Again, main points. In our speech of self-introduction, listen for the personality traits that they're going to share with you. And that would be your main point: honesty, loyalty, competitiveness, and just jot that single word down. And then especially now, when we get into our informative and our persuasive speeches, you're going to listen for the evidence that they're using to prove their points or to prove their conclusions. And we have to ask, is the evidence they're using accurate? They'll use expert testimony, peer testimony, statistics, examples, stories. All of these items will hopefully prove the conclusion that they want you to believe. So we ask ourselves, is it accurate? Is it relevant? Does it relate to the point they're trying to prove? Have they given us enough evidence to believe them or their point of view? And is the evidence objective? We want experts who are unbiased. The CEO from Coke holding up a bottle of Coke and saying, "There's nothing unhealthy in Coke," is a biased expert. Then watch for technique, methods. How did they snag our attention in the attention getter? Did they tell a story? Did they use a catchy quote or catchy line? How did they get us on board with them? And then what kind of language did they use? Was it vivid? Was it descriptive? Great speakers create mind movies. They create pictures in the minds of the audience. And listen to their language to see if they did that very thing, if you could see pictures while they were speaking. And then, you all are coaches as well, look for their strengths and look for where they are weak. And we like to encourage each other. You were strong here. I really like the way you did that. You could improve here. And we'll help each other grow and develop these speaking and listening skills. If you will learn to listen, it will go a long, long way to helping you succeed in life.